credit hours.
በጣም
2.
ምርጥና ጠቃሚ ነው።
ECTS.
ይሄን እንድታደምጡ ተጋብዛችኋለሁ። በጣም ምርጥ ፓወርፖይንት ነው። ፓወርፖይንቱ ኢንክሉሲቭ ነው። እስከ መጨረሻው ደቂቃ ያው እንድትከታተሉት ጋብዛችኋለሁ ማለት ነው። እንግዲህ ኮሜንት ላይ አስቀምጡ። ሌላም ማቀርብላችሁ ኮርስ ካለ ቻፕተር 1 አሁን ማቀርብላችሁ ይሆናል። አንደርስታንዲንግ ዲዛቢሊቲስ ኤንድ ቨልነራቢሊቲስ ይላል። ቨልነራቢሊቲ እና ዲዛቢሊቲ ምን አይነት ኮንሴፕት እንዳለው በደንብ የሚያጠና ፓርት ነው ማለት ነው። አሁን ወደ ጉዳያችን እንግባ። ያው ኤርፎን ሰክታችሁ ሊሆን ይችላል ወይም ደግሞ ያለ ኤርፎንም ሊሆን ይችላል። ያው ቪዲዮውን እንድታዳምጡት ምክንያቱም በጆሮአችን ስናዳምጥ ነው ብዙ ጊዜ የሚገባንና እስከ መጨረሻው እንድትከታተሉ ጋበዝኩ። ለቻናሉ አዲስ የሆናችሁ ሰዎች ሰብስክራይብ እንዲሁም ላይክ አድርጉ። ለጓደኞቻችሁ ደግሞ ሼር ማድረግ አትርሱ ማለት ነው። ይመቻችሁ። ወደ ቪዲዮውን ቀጥል።
Chapter 1 Understanding Disabilities and Vulnerabilities. Definitions of basic terms: impairment, disability, and handicap. The impairment, it refers to any loss or abnormality of physiological, psychological, or anatomical structure or function.
እንግዲህ ኢምፔርመንት ምንለው ምን አብኖርማሊቲ ሲኖር ወይም ሎስ ሲኖር ነው። ሳይኮሎጂካል ሊሆን ይችላል፣ ፊዚካል ሊሆን ይችላል፣ አናቶሚካል ስትራክቸር ኦር ፋንክሽን ይላል። የሆነ ሳይኮ ወይም በአናቶሚ ሊሆን ይችላል። የሆነ አካል ሲጎዳ ነው ኢምፔርመንት የሚለውን የምናይበት ፓርት ነው።
Function. It is the absence of particular body part or organ. It could also a condition in which the body exists but doesn't function. E.g. eyes that do not see well, arms and legs that are deformed, or a brain not developing in a typical way, etc. Disability. Any restriction or lack, resulting from an impairment, of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. The full inclusion of people with impairments in society can be inhibited by 1. Attitudinal, societal barriers, such as stigma. 2. Physical barriers, environmental barriers, such as absence of stairs. And 3. Policy barriers, systemic barriers. Where all together can create a disabling effect and inhibit disability inclusive development. They are disabling factors. Handicapped. A disadvantage for a given individual, resulting from an impairment or a disability that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal, depending on age, sex, and social and culture factors, for that individual. It is evident from the definitions above that a handicap is THERESULTBOTHOFANIMPAIRMENTANDOF environmental conditions. If environmental barriers are taken away, the person will still be impaired, but not necessarily handicapped. Understanding disabilities and vulnerabilities. What is disability? One medical approach. Disability is pathology, physiological, biological, and intellectual. Disability means functional limitations due to physical, intellectual, or psychic impairment, health or psychic disorders on a person, who 1996. The medical definition has given rise to the idea that people are individual objects to be treated/cured, changed or improved and made more normal. 2. The social definition of disability. Disability is a highly varied and complex condition with a range of implications for social identity and behavior. Disability largely depends on the context/background and is a consequence of discrimination, prejudice, and exclusion. Emphasizes/underlines the shortcomings in the environment and in many organized activities in society, for example on information, communication, and education, which prevent persons with disabilities from participating on equal positions. Medical model, social model, child is faulty, child is valued, diagnosis and labeling, strengths and needs identified, impairment is focus of attention, barriers identified and solutions developed, segregation and alternative services, resources made available, and RY if no RMAL enough, OR permanent exclusion, DIVER SID YWELCOMED, child is welcomed, society remains unchanged, society evolves. Causes of disability v. Some people, especially in the past times, wrongly believe that disability is due to their ancestors and parents' sin, a punishment from God. But it is a wrong misconception. Disability can be caused by the following factors: 1. Genetic causes. 2. Environmental. 3. Unknown causes. 1. Genetic causes. Abnormalities in genes and genetic inheritance can cause intellectual disability in children. Down syndrome is the most common genetic condition. Diseases, illnesses, and overexposure. Mothers to X-rays can cause a genetic disorder. 2. Environmental. Before birth poverty and malnutrition in pregnant mothers can cause a deficiency in vital minerals and result in deformation issues in the unborn child. After birth, poverty and malnutrition can also cause poor development of vital organs in the child, which can eventually lead to disability. 2. Environmental. The use of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, the exposure to certain toxic chemicals and illnesses, toxoplasmosis, cytomegalovirus, rubella, and syphilis by a pregnant mother can cause intellectual disability to the child. Childhood diseases such as a whooping cough, measles, and chickenpox may lead to meningitis and encephalitis. This can cause damage to the brain of the child. Toxic materials such as lead and mercury can damage the brain too. Car accidents, falls, etc., and environmental factors. 3. Unknown causes. Scientists have still not figured out what and how some things in the body, cells, brain, and genes come about. Humans have still not found all the answers to all the defects in the human body. Inaccessible environments. Sometimes society makes it difficult for people with some impairment to function freely. When society develops infrastructure such as houses, roads, parks, and other public places without consideration to people with impairment. Lack of awareness, support services, health, and opportunities for people with impairment can cause additional disability to people with disabilities and even people the so-called normal. Type of disabilities. There are 9 types of disabilities. 1. Visual impairment. 2. Hearing impairment. 3. Specific learning disability. 4. Speech and language impairments. 5. Autism. 6. Emotional and behavioral disorders. 7. Intellectual disability. 8. Physical disability / orthopedic impairment and health impairment. 9. Vulnerability. 1. Visual impairment. Classifications of visual impairment. 1. Blindness, total absence of sight. 2. Low vision, partial sighted. 1. Blindness, total lose to see because of disease or damage of the eye, optic nerve, or brain. The term blindness typically refers to vision loss that is not correctable with eyeglasses or contact lenses. 2. Low vision, moderately impaired vision. People with low vision may have a visual impairment that affects only central vision, the area directly in front of the eyes, peripheral vision, the area to either side of and slightly behind the eyes. 2. Hearing impairment. A person suffering from hearing impairment has difficulty in perceiving or identifying sound clearly due to auditory problems. Hearing impairment as a generic term indicating a continuum of hearing loss from mild to profound, which includes the subclassifications of the hard of hearing and deaf. 1. Hard of hearing. 2. Deaf. 1. Hard of hearing. Whether permanent of fluctuating, which adversely affects a child's educational performance but which is not included under the definition of deaf. 2. Deaf. Defined as a hearing impairment that is so severe that the child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification. Those who have difficulty understanding speech, even with hearing aids, but can successfully communicate in sign language. 3. Specific learning disability. It means a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written, that may manifest itself in the imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or to do mathematical calculations. Q. Auditory processing disorder, APD. Individuals with APD do not recognize subtle differences between sounds in words, even when the sounds are loud and clear enough to be heard. A. Dyscalculia. A specific learning disability that affects a person's ability to understand numbers and learn mathematics. Auditory processing disorder (CONTID). B. Dysgraphia, learning disability that affects a person's handwriting ability and fine motor skills. Problems like inconsistent spacing, poor spelling, and difficulty composing writing as well as thinking and writing at the same time. C. Dyslexia, it affects reading and related language-based processing skills. Dyslexia is sometimes referred to as a language-based learning disability. Auditory processing disorder (CONTID). D. Language processing disorder. Auditory processing disorder is difficulty attaching meaning to sound groups that form words, sentences, and stories. While an APD affects the interpretation of all sounds coming into the brain, a language processing disorder, LPD, relates only to the processing of language. LPD can affect expressive language and/or receptive language. E. Nonverbal learning disabilities. Nonverbal language disabilities has trouble interpreting nonverbal cues like facial expressions or body language, and may have poor coordination. Auditory processing disorder (CONTID). F. Visual perceptual/visual motor deficit. It affects the understanding of information that a person sees, or the ability to draw or copy. It can result in missing subtle differences in shapes or printed letters, losing place frequently, struggles with cutting, holding pencil too tightly, or poor eye/hand coordination. 4. Speech and language impairments. It is communication disorders such as stuttering, impaired articulation, language impairment, or a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. It is disorder that adversely affects the child's ability to talk, understand, read, and write. SLE divided into two groups, 1. Speech impairments. 2. Language impairments. 1. Speech impairments. Articulation disorders are errors in the production of speech sounds that may be related to anatomical or physiological limitations in the skeletal, muscular, or neuromuscular support for speech production. Speech impairments (CONTID). O. Omissions, BO for boat, O. Substitutions, WABIT for rabbit, O. Distortions, SHLIP for sip. Fluency disorders are difficulties with the rhythm and timing of speech characterized by hesitations, repetitions, or prolongations of sounds, syllables, words, or phrases. Common fluency disorders include stuttering, rapid-fire repetitions of consonant or vowel sounds especially at the beginning of words, prolongations, hesitations, interjections, and complete verbal blocks. Cluttering, excessively fast and jerky speech. Speech impairments (CONTID). 1. Language impairments. Q. There are 5 basic areas of language impairments. 1. Phonological disorders. 2. Morphological disorders. 3. Semantic disorders. 4. Syntactical deficits. 5. Pragmatic difficulties. 1. Phonological disorders. The abnormal organization of the phonological system, or a significant deficit in speech production or perception. Language impairments (CONTID). 2. Morphological disorders. O. Difficulties with morphological inflections, inflections on nouns, verbs, and adjectives that signal different kinds of meanings. 3. Semantic disorders. O. Poor vocabulary development, inappropriate use of word meanings, and/or inability to comprehend word meanings. 4. Syntactic disorder. Term given when children or adults have difficulty sequencing words, thoughts, and information in order. 5. Pragmatic difficulties. O. Problems in understanding and using language in different social contexts. 5. Autism. It is developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction. Characteristics often associated with autism are engaging in repetitive activities and stereotyped movements, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routines, and unusual responses to sensory experiences. Autism is a neurodevelopment disorder defined by IMPAIRMENTSINSOCIALANDCOMMUNICATION development, accompanied by stereotyped patterns of behavior and interest. 6. Emotional and behavioral disorders. V. Classification of behavioral and emotional disorders. Different professionals have developed a classification system, which shows some promise for educational practice. These include conduct disorder. Individuals may seek attention, are disruptive and act out. The disorder is classified by type, U overt, with violence or tantrums, versus U covert, with lying, stealing, and / or drug use. Socialized aggression. Individuals join subculture group of peers who are openly disrespectful to their peers, teachers, and parents. Attention problems. These individuals may have attention deficit, are easily destructible and have poor concentration. 6. Emotional and behavioral disorders. Content. Anxiety / withdrawn. They typically have low self-esteem and withdraw from immediate activities. They are also anxious and frequently depressed. Psychotic behavior. These individuals show more bizarre behavior. They may hallucinate, deal in a fantasy world, and may even talk in gibberish / nonsense. Hallucination, perception of non-existent objects and events. Motor excess. These students are hyperactive. They cannot sit nor listen to others nor keep their attention focused. Emotional and behavioral disorders. Content. V. Kaufman, 1993, conclude that emotion or behavioral disorders fall into two broad classifications. 1. Externalizing behavior, also called under-control disorder, includes such problems: disobedience, disruptive NESS, fighting, TMRS tantrums, irresponsibility, jealous, anger, attention-seeking, etc. 2. Internalizing behavior, also known as over-control disorders, include such problems: anxiety, immaturity, shyness, social withdrawal, feeling of inadequacy, inferiority, guilt, depression, and worries a great deal. Emotional and behavioral disorders. Content. V. Causes of behavioral and emotional disorders. Behavioral and emotion disorders result from many causes. These includes the following. 1. Biological includes genetic disorders, brain damage, and malnutrition, allergies, temperament, and damage to the central nervous system. 2. Family factors include family interactions, family influence, child abuse, neglect, and poor disciplinary practices at home. 3. Cultural factors include some traditional and cultural negative practices, for example watching violence and sexually oriented movies and TV programs. 4. Environmental factors include peer pressure, living in impoverished areas, and schooling practices that are unresponsive to individual needs. 7. Intellectual disability. This type of disability characterized by significant limitations in both intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior, which covers many everyday social and practical skills. This disability originates before the age of 18. An individual is considered to have an intellectual disability based on the following criteria: 1. Sub-average intellectual functioning. 2. Significant limitations. 1. Sub-average intellectual functioning. It refers to general mental capacity, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, and so on. Intellectual disability. Content. Two significant limitations exist in two or more adaptive skill areas. It is the collection of conceptual, social, and practical skills that are learned and performed by people in their everyday lives. O. Conceptual skills: language and literacy, money, time, and number concepts, and self-direction. O. Social skills: interpersonal skills, social responsibility, self-esteem, gullibility, innocence, i.e., suspicion, social problem solving, and the ability to follow rules/obey laws and to avoid being victimized. O. Practical skills: activities of daily living, personal care, occupational skills, healthcare, travel/transportation, schedules/routines, safety, use of money, use of the telephone. Intellectual disability content. People with intellectual disabilities, academic learning can be affected, as well as their ability to adapt to home, school, and community environments are presented under the following subheadings. General cognition. They vary physically and emotionally, as well as by personality, disposition, and beliefs. Their apparent slowness in learning may be related to the delayed rate of intellectual development. Learning and memory. Children with intellectual disabilities may not spontaneously use appropriate learning or memory retention strategies and may have difficulty
ቻፕተር 1 ፓርት 1 ነው እስካሁን ያቀረብኩላችሁ። አሁን ደግሞ ፓርት
2 social exclusion
ቻፕተር 1 ፓርት 1 ነበር ያቀረብኩላችሁ። ፓርት 2 በሌላ ቪዲዮ ምናየው ይሆናል ማለት ነው። ትንሽ በዛ ስላለብኝ ነው፣ ምክንያቱም ለእናንተ ማሰልቼ ይሆናል በማለት ነበር ያው ወደ 20 አካባቢ ደቂቃ ያሳጠርኩት ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ እስካሁን ስለተከታተላችሁኝ አመሰግናለሁ። በጣም አሪፍ ቪዲዮ እንደነበር ተስፋ አደርጋለሁ። በነገው ዕለት ፓርት 2 አቀርብላችኋለሁ ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ እስከዛው ሰላም ቆዩ እያልኩ ሰናበታለሁ ማለት ነው። ቻው።